welcome. Thank you so much for making time today to come and join us and bless us in this. Um, so, I have never met Swamiji before, but I have been interacting with him off and on the phone. I tried to meet him the last time when I was in Bangalore, but just could not happen. I guess that sooner or later it's going to happen. What was interesting for me was I came across Swamiji when I saw one of his posts on LinkedIn, and that was pretty interesting for me. But that Swamiji was on LinkedIn and he was commenting on something. And then when I looked him around, I got a double surprise. Swamiji actually happens to be from BITS Pilani. So it was such a amazing thing. So I thought I will welcome Swamiji to this group. And Swamiji, I request you to please say a few words. We've been studying the Gita by Swami Dayananda, who has been guiding us through his works, and of course listening to several scriptures from different masters. But you being a direct disciple of Swami Dayananda, would be grateful if you can please share some insights from you before we go to the next presentation.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for inviting me. Actually, I prefer to talk with people having their videos on, actually. So generally, I don't, not too comfortable with talking to blank screens. So some names. So even in my classes, I make that a rule. So either they keep the camera on throughout the duration of the class, or they don't join the class. So this teaching generally, it was always given face to face. So this kind of impersonal or anonymous listening was never there. So yeah. So anyway, thank you. So some of you have switched on your cameras. So yeah. Anyway, so. But having studied in BITS Pilani has nothing to do with my interest in spirituality. So, and I don't even know whether it has contributed in any way. So, to my pursuit of spirituality. So, maybe some that academic rigor that you go through. So, it has probably helped in a small way, but not very significant anyway. So, yeah, so you have given me 15 minutes. So I was just thinking it's like a TED Talk schedule. So I don't know how much I'll be able to say in 15 minutes. So, but still I'll try to do whatever I can. So, so nice to hear that you've been studying Swamiji's book. So, generally when we look at our own lives, a normal human being's life, so we are all running at breakneck speed. So it's a dash from the start to the finish. And we, get into something or the other on the way. And then we start chasing it. So even we very proudly say that one should always chase one's dreams and then make it happen. So all of us have our own dreams. And then we also evaluate ourselves based on how many of our dreams we have managed to fulfill. So these dreams are of different varieties. So some may be dreaming of money, some may be dreaming of power, some may be dreaming of some other kind of wealth or popularity, or so many different things. And if we are lucky, or in Vedanta we say, if you have enough punya, So at some point of time, you realize that this endless running around at breakneck speed, so that's not leading you anywhere. The only consolation is that we are in good company. The whole world is in the same boat. So everyone thinks that this is the way to live one's life. So chasing something or the other. And but at some point, so we feel. So some people may not even realize that, but for some reason they get interested in Vedanta or Gita. So when someone realizes that whatever I have been doing so far has not been giving me whatever I'm really seeking. So then that becomes the first step towards spirituality. So then, as I said, if we are lucky or if we have enough punya, so we happen to also go in the right direction. So then we get interested in Gita, so Upanishad, so Vedanta. So when we come to Vedanta, what Vedanta says is that all your old versions or all your earlier assumptions are completely wrong. So Vedanta says that any amount of success in the relative world is never going to give you what you're really seeking. So what one is really seeking is to have happiness without being contaminated by any kind of unhappiness or sadness. So we are all, like Rajesh has also written the book, So Happy Life. So we are all seeking happiness, but Vedanta says that happiness that you are seeking outside in various pursuits, that is your own very nature. So how do we assimilate this knowledge? Fortunately, we have a very structured, systematic teaching methodology for communicating this knowledge. In fact, if you ask what is unique about spirituality in India, so the main thing is only the structured teaching methodology that we have. And this pursuit is never recommended to be done by a person independent of a teacher. You cannot do it on your own. Why cannot I do it on my own? Because that's the nature of the subject matter. So that's how the subject is. Because it's what we are seeking is something very abstract. So if it was any other subject, like any science for that matter, it is always available for verification by one of your sense organs. So science, the basic principles of science is it should be verifiable, it should be repeatable. So verifiable by any of your sense organs. And then you should also establish the repeatability. But with regard to the Atma, with regard to the truth of oneself, it is not verifiable by any other means of knowledge. And again, the solution for this problem, for this problem of looking outward or looking in the wrong direction is only educating myself properly. And that is where Vedanta comes in. We look at Vedanta as an independent means of knowledge. So we call it a pramana. So pramana, pramana can shabda pramana. So pramana normally means just means of knowledge. So, but here it is a means of knowledge that is different from all other means of knowledge that we use to interact with the outside world. So this is Shabda Pramana. And the Bhagavad Gita also, the Upanishads, naturally they are part of the Vedas. And the Upanishads are the primary source of knowledge. So there are three basic requirements for an Upanishad, for something to be included in the Vedas. The first requirement, the primary requirement is it should be anadhigata. It should not be available for any other means of knowledge. If it is available for any other means of knowledge, then the Veda is useless. Because I can do it on my own. I don't need the Veda. So, and then it should not be negated by any normal means of knowledge. So it should not be available for being dismissed by any of our other pramanas. So anadhigata, abadhita, and then the third requirement is that gaining this knowledge should also give me some tangible benefit. Otherwise, if it is something abstract, so then I break my head on that. I spend a lot of time. And ultimately, I don't get anything out of it. So then it is waste of time, it is useless. So the third requirement is it is arthavat palabodhakatva. So it should have a tangible benefit. So the Upanishads satisfy all these conditions. So the knowledge that is given by the Upanishad, it is not available for any other means of knowledge. It cannot be dismissed by any other means of knowledge. And then this knowledge is also beneficial to me. It is also useful to me. And the Upanishads are the primary source of knowledge. But we give this same status, almost the same status of the Upanishad that the Upanishads have to the Bhagavad Gita also. Because one is, we firmly believe that Lord Krishna was an avatara. So it has directly come from Lord Krishna, directly being taught by Lord Krishna. And as far as the knowledge contained in the Bhagavad Gita is concerned, it is exactly what is there in the Upanishad. So there is no contradiction whatsoever. And there is no conflict. But there is an advantage with the Gita, which is that it also, if a person, the Upanishads are very direct. So one needs to be prepared to listen to the Upanishads and then assimilate whatever the Upanishads say. The Bhagavad Gita, the advantage with the Bhagavad Gita also is that if you are not prepared for this knowledge, then the Bhagavad Gita gives you very discreet and very clear steps as to how you can prepare yourself for gaining this knowledge. So that is why we call the Bhagavad Gita also as Yoga Shastra. So at the end of each chapter, so we chant, so Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre. So it is both the Brahma Vidya, both absolute knowledge, and it is also Yoga Shastra. So that is why even though nothing can have the same status as that as of the Upanishad, but Bhagavad Gita is very close, is almost there. So, but as far as the knowledge is concerned, so definitely there is no conflict. And the Bhagavad Gita also makes it clear that one should not look at this knowledge as some kind of a theoretical understanding. That is a mistake many people commit. In fact, there are many people talking about Bhagavad Gita as, as a source of management principles. So Bhagavad Gita for productivity, Bhagavad Gita for personality development. So traditionally we consider it total nonsense. So we look at Bhagavad Gita purely for self-knowledge. Even though you may get, certain other relative tools also. So for interacting with the outside world, but that is not the primary intention with which Lord Krishna taught the Bhagavad Gita. And if one looks at it, so in these limited ways, it is like someone offers you $1 million and then someone offers you $100. So, and then you go to the person who is offering you $100. So self-knowledge is far, far greater than any of these limited and insignificant benefits. So, so we look at Bhagavad Gita as something that it leads us and then helps us go all the way. So that's why it's always a good idea to also put in a lot of effort to change one's normal ways of thinking, to transform oneself, because the knowledge is not theoretical. So if it is theoretical, then it is like what a lot of these Western philosophers have said. And when you look at their own biographies, most of them, even though they were great thinkers, most of them ended up in mental asylums. So what is the point of being such a great thinker? So one needs to also bring about tangible change in one's lifestyle. So one's priorities. Bhagavad Gita Upanishads don't work. So if you don't want to change yourself, so if you don't want to look at your own priorities, and then if you find that they are not very helpful for your own growth, then ruthlessly give them up. So that's why Lord Krishna also says in the 15th chapter of the Gita, he says, Asanga Shastrena Dridhena Chitva. So with this weapon of detachment, Asanga, you firmly and once and for all, so you destroy all these old unhelpful ways of thinking. So I think I'm almost probably exceeded my time. I've been given 15 minutes here. So it's very good that you're spending a lot of time, but it would also be good if you could also systematically start studying the Gita. So reading the Gita is very helpful, but studying the Gita systematically, consistently over a length of time, that is absolutely unavoidable. So just a passing or a passing curiosity or I mean that is not very. It doesn't lead you too far. So hopefully you will be able to do that, or probably you're already doing that. So that is a very, very important component of this whole pursuit. So that is why living with a guru, staying with a guru, even if you may not be able to do that at this point in time. So that is how this knowledge was always gained. So to summarize whatever I have said, so whenever you study the Gita, so you look at it as an independent means of knowledge. So, independent means of knowledge, that knowledge which cannot be gained from any other source. It is really true, because you cannot accidentally, my guru used to say, you cannot accidentally stumble upon Atmajnana. Even if you keep on asking this question, so who am I, who am I, who am I, who am I? Most probably you will only end up with the conclusion that I'm an idiot. Because if you knew the answer, then your mind would have given the answer long back. So why was the mind hiding it from you, keeping it a secret from you? So, and however long you keep asking, you will still not get the answer. And you need something like a mirror to show who you are, show your real self to you. And that is how we look at the Upanishads and Bhagavad Gita. So with that attitude, if you look at the Upanishads and Gita, so then you have this attitude of total Shraddha. So Shraddha not in the sense of blind faith, but we always define Shraddha as belief pending inquiry. You start with the belief, just like any other subject matter. So when you start studying something, you don't know where you're going to end. So what is the end point? You start with the belief that if I do this, then I will gain this knowledge. Someone is chatting, I'm not going to answer to chat. Someone wants, they have to come here and then ask the question. So
Swamiji, there are 2-3 questions. The protocol that I was following was that I'll ask the question on behalf of the audience at the end of your talk.
Yeah, okay. So generally I prefer to look at the person who is asking the questions also, because you always answer the questioner. So this is always a personal teaching. It cannot be an impersonal communication. So we are not trained to do that actually. So we are not used to doing that. So like a seminar, so someone asks a question and you just answer the question. It's difficult. So anyway, so when you look at it with that kind of attitude, so Bhagavad Gita Upanishad, so then it also necessarily includes a lot of Shraddha. So we call it belief pending inquiry. So person starts with a belief, and then you go through the Upanishads have their own logic built into them. Even though it is not the logic with which we study any other subject, because it is verifiable. Here it is Shruti Sammata Tarka, we call it. So logic which is very rational, but still at the same time very different from everything else. So you put yourself through the process. So then slowly you can convince yourself. So that this is how it is. So yeah. So so we can ask the question if you have any.
Thank you so much, Swamiji. Actually, yeah, you said it very well. And one of the things that we have planned for this year is to maybe select about 200 or so important shlokas from the Gita and use either one of Swami Chinmayananda's book, which the Holy Gita, or Swami Paramarthananda's lectures, and go through some of these shlokas in detail and kind of discuss, clarify with each other. And that's the plan for this year. So let's see how it goes in this year, given the COVID situation and all that. So thank you for that wonderful message, Swamiji. There were two questions here, and I don't know how long we have the time for, but maybe I'll just ask the questions. The question that we had was, one was, it would be good to hear what triggered Swamiji to become a monk. That was one question. And the second question was, does one have to be religious to study or understand Gita? So these are the two questions from the audience, Swamiji, for you.
Yeah. What triggered me? I think no one can answer that question. At some point, you feel that this is what you should do. So, but then after you get that strong urge, after that, what you do is in your hands. But the urge is not in your hands. So it just comes, that's all. There may be some triggers actually, so which may push you in this direction. There usually is, there always is. I mean, some trigger or the other. But then how you use that trigger is purely one's own choice. So, and going in the, even if you have the trigger and still pursuing in the right direction, it's all Bhagwan. You cannot take anything, any credit for yourself. You just happen to meet someone, and then, so if it is the right person, then it means you had a lot of punya, that's all. Because when you have this trigger, you have no knowledge as to how to look for a guru, and then what kind of a guru. So you don't know nothing about what you have to do. So you're just blindly, pursuing something. So that Ishvara's grace, so even in Shankaracharya says, Ishvara anugraha deva pumsam advaita vasana. So you cannot claim any personal credit for whatever you do. But the choices you make, yes, little bit, very, very small amount of free will you have. So it's there. Free will is definitely there. You can't say it's not there. I'm not denying the free will. The desire is there, that mumukshutvam is there. So that's very strong. So, but all that you attribute only to your punya, purva. So in Guru Stotram we say, Aneka Janma Samprapta Karma Bandha Vidahine Atma Jnana Pradhanene Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So, Aneka Janma Samprapta. How many janmas we have been doing, trying to do this, gain self-knowledge, and then getting lost in so many different ways. Who knows? So what all we have suffered. So somehow in this Janma, you're somehow Bhagavan gives you the right person. So to answer your question, what made me, some urge was there. So, and then one thing I always promised myself is that I will not do it if I don't enjoy it. So I will not do it just for some intellectual kick or some boosting one's ego. But what happened was, as I started going deeper, so getting more into it, so then I really enjoyed what I was doing. So only if you really stick with it, so that's what makes you stick with the pursuit also. So you have to, there are some points when it's very difficult to change one attitudes. So transform oneself because it is very, very subtle. So when things that you are so carefully built up, so priorities, giving up certain priorities and then desires and so your old habits, old ways of thinking. But still, when you have sight of the bigger picture, so then you have the courage and strength so to overcome that. So, but you have to enjoy it. So that's what keeps you going. Yeah, next question. What is the next question?
The second question was, does one have to be religious to study and understand Gita?
Yeah, is the person here? Arun Kanchi. Okay. So now you have to tell me what you mean by religious. Because I cannot make that assumption. So if you tell me because religious can have various connotations. Okay, so you have to tell me what you mean by religious, then I can answer your question.
That's a good question back to me. No, I don't mean anything specific. I can talk about myself. I am not religious or not so religious, and I don't really know what really to be religious means. So the question is, do you have to be religious, and what does that really mean?
No, at least you have some idea of what it means to be religious. I mean, do you think religion means to do certain rituals? Is that what you understand by the word religious? Or what do you mean by religious? I mean, going to a temple every day, does that qualify to be called religious? What exactly, when you're negating something, or when you're asking?
No, I'm not negating it actually. Even I don't know what it is to be religious.
No, some understanding, appreciation should be there in your mind. See, when, okay, so to give a general answer, the whole Gita talks about Karma Yoga. So there can be no Karma Yoga without an understanding of Ishvara. You cannot have secular Karma Yoga. Religion, if you take it to mean accepting God, accepting an Almighty. So that is why you are religious in the first place. One's own version of who that Almighty is, or so what are, what kind of characteristics he has, whether it is a he or a she. So that is the primary requirement of any religious activity. But Gita, I mean, for spirituality, yes, you cannot be a secular mumukshu. You cannot say, I don't accept an Ishvara, and still I want to be spiritual. So that would just be a theoretical approach to spirituality. Doesn't work. But when you go through the Gita, Gita also explains Ishvara. Bhagavan explains himself. So if you say that I don't believe in a God sitting somewhere, so in heaven or in Vaikuntha or Kailasa, then Lord Krishna would also say, even I don't believe. So there can be someone sitting somewhere, and he can be controlling us like, like a puppet show. So what the teaching of the Gita is that Almighty who is responsible for the creation of this universe. There is someone, because there is so much knowledge pervading this universe. Wherever there is knowledge, it always originates from a conscious being. That conscious being might not be like you and me, might not be like a physical person. So the Gita, the Upanishads say that that conscious being, there is a conscious being who we call the Nimitta Karanam. So that Nimitta, Abhinna Nimitta Upadana Karanam. So Nimitta Karanam, so that conscious being is whom we call Ishvara. So acceptance of Ishvara is a basic requirement, yes. If that by religious you mean acceptance of Ishvara, yes, you need to. But you can ask questions about who that Ishvara is, so what kind he is, and you can. So Krishna will also help you understand Ishvara. And when you appreciate, when you understand Ishvara, so then you also look at yourself in a different way. So the way we look at ourselves, as individuals, so that also loses meaning. So the individual merges into the total. So what I have assumed to be the individual doesn't exist. So it's nitya, it is false. The assumption is false. So the individuality itself doesn't exist. It's only a seeming reality. So then the content of the individual is equated with the content of the total. That is where we make the equation. So this is what we call Advaita. So that is why, to negate my own understanding of myself, I need to have a lot of courage. So because I have invested so much in this assumption. So you have to, so all of you may have achieved a lot of success in the relative world. But Vedanta will tell you it is all meaningless. So it all amounts to nothing. Whatever success you have achieved in the relative world, it is absolutely useless. Just throw it into the garbage. Because it is all mithya. It's very difficult. So I may be sounding very blunt here. But Vedanta is blunt. So better be ready to listen. So better be ready to hear. So what you're not expecting. So we have to have the courage to really listen to all of this and still assimilate. But Vedanta will also prove why it is like that. So all that we have done in our life so far, so just ruthlessly throw it into the garbage. It amounts to nothing. All your relationships, they all amount to nothing. It doesn't mean that you have to cut off your relationships, but it only means that you should have a right perspective. So look at yourself and the external world. Have the right perspective towards yourself and the world outside.
Thank you, Swamiji. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Actually, like you said, this is, I have more questions now, but like you said earlier, we have to come to you and discuss this in more detail. So we can't do this online like this. So I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Yeah. No, I take online classes also. You're welcome to join if you want.
I will share Swamiji's details for all of you. With that, I think there are no more questions. Swamiji, thank you so much for your wisdom. Really grateful that you spent some time with us today. I know it's quite late. You've been going from one class to the other, but really thank you so much. And we look forward to meeting up with you next time when I'm in Bangalore next.
Sure.
Yeah,
Sure.
and you're welcome to stay on for the next presentation, which Shanta is going to make about her journey, or it's up to you, Swamiji, up to your time commitments, whichever way that you think it's appropriate for you.
I'll stay for some time and then I'll disconnect.
All right. Okay. So thank you so much, Swamiji. And with that.